So
Okay,
are we
recording.
are we live?
We're recording now, and we have, say, about an hour before I go and get GM. I'm just going to bring up the text you sent of Peter's questions. So basically, once this is recording, I can then upload it to YouTube. It creates a transcript. That transcript can go into Jade, and Jade can say, okay, based upon your conversation and the questions you have to answer, here's the, and it just organizes it basically.
Yeah, well, and you have a relationship with Jade, and Jade knows about me, and the teachings and all that. So I think that this is a beautiful tool for us to be able to move forward with this. And it really, I'm all for it. Plus, I want to archive, all of our conversations. We should be just doing like this and archive all the chats. Don't have to everything, but I think we need to build up.
Having it archived, that makes,
Yeah, to have a YouTube channel. We don't have to necessarily have it with any kind of viewing. And we could do some editing or not. It could just be a conversation, that we just put out there or whatever on, unity of breath, whatever, just anyway. So yeah, about questions.
Yes, questions.
Questions. I have a lot more answers for certainly. Before we move on to questions, and maybe because of Diego and the questions and about, we could, I think something is a good starting place. Maybe just before we get into the questions, maybe, I'm not sure.
Well, I didn't hear the end of the conversation you had.
Right, and it was kind of hurried along, and I'm not. Let's start with this. This is a good starting point. I'm not really keen on people having set times to start things, whatever, not even reaching out and all that kind of stuff. So I'm with you on that, and so I'm about being prompt about commitments and all that kind of stuff. I take my words very seriously in my times, and so I think that I understood between the two of us about that going forward.
Yes, good.
Yeah,
we have to be models of, if you're a conscious breathing entity that is living in the world in a specific way, then we are role models for that way of living.
Well, it's about being responsible for your actions, and and understanding what the ramifications of those actions and your words, and truth and honesty, all that kind of is all about breath. Breath is going to strip it away, especially bringing tools in like with the mirror work, and and mirror work just helps with self-reflection, and that's what the point of breath is to begin with, is self-reflection. And you could see the proverbial house of mirrors unto itself. No, it's key. It's a key thing that happens when you become one with breath. You can see, to me, it's like when you're in breath, when you're in this space, and to me it's just a meditative space where you're not being affected by the energies that are coming at you every nanosecond, right? We're having trillions and trillions of bits of information at all times, from gravity to 5G to wind to rain. It's how you can be calm through the storm of it all and not being reactionary to everything. That's what breath is to me. Because when you can be in that, it doesn't mean the shit's not going to happen. It just means you're going to be at a steady state to be able to be, in that flow. Bruce Lee said, be like water. Well, I say be like air. Because air is it's a big proponent, a big part of water itself. So really, if you want to be like air, because we are essentially air, if you break it down to it.
Well, I think from the questions that Peter wrote, I'd say the one that stands out to start with would be, what do you see as the core of the Unity of Breath teachings? Because I guess that will take what we choose to record.
Well, I think that just kind of touched on it right there. I mean, it's the core. What is the core? I mean, there's just so many aspects of the core. The core is getting people to, utilize the greatest biohack that we have, something that's free and available for every single person in this planet. And it's something that is just extremely underutilized, and it's not given the credence that it's due in our overall well-being and health. I mean, there is no other answer when you come to it, when you look at the magnitude of the importance of breath versus anything. It's the first thing we do, when we come into this world. It's the last thing we do when we leave this world. So the essence of what we are is breath. And then how does it occupy, and how do we work it within this physical form that we call the human body? It's the greatest biohack that we have, yet very underutilized. It's not utilized at all, mostly.
For me, there's I think I wrote it further up in the in our interaction, is that when I spoke to some of my students today, and they were saying, based upon me talking about it a lot, they're now, every time they think about breathing, they think of me. So, and that they're not doing it. They know that they're agitated, but they're in the agitation. So, you said that, part of the unity of breath is that we start to take responsibility for our own breath, but also sharing with others. Hey, you're not breathing.
Yeah. No, man, that's what the unity is all about. We're all one breath. We share the same breath. That's, the physical form, we're all look different, but we're all breathing in that same breath of air. And that's where we could all breathe together. We could all help each other along this way. It's a difficult path. I mean, life is painful. If you attach to one side or the other of coin of what feeling is, and a lot of people disidentify themselves through pain. And the best way actually to get rid of pain out of the body is through breath. Most people think that the best part of, or the most part of breath is inhalation, and it's not. We don't die from lack of oxygen. And actually, that's oxygen is an oxidizer, and an oxidizer is why are we taking all these food antioxidants and so forth and so on. The most important part of breath is exhalation. The word nirvana actually means to blow out, as in candle. It's a Sanskrit word, and if you understand the meaning of blow out as in candle, that's meaning through exhalation you will find this place called nirvana. It's called peace. It's about getting the siddhi out of the body. The most efficient way to get a siddhi out of the body, is through exhalation. Up to 85% of getting the toxic waste out of the mitochondrial cell that causes us pain and disease.
And you're saying that many people will do this through exercise once or twice a day, running up the stairs, whatever, but it's not conscious and it's not consistent. And only when you fully exhale are you fully releasing all the toxins from your lungs. And many people, therefore, will have never done that.
Exercise is great. I've done tremendous amounts of exercise. I've ridden over 300,000 miles of bicycle, both mountain and road bike. 40,000 miles of running, 20,000 miles of swimming, ball sports. A competitive volleyball player, won tournaments, basketball, anything and everything I've done. But that's all forced breathing. That's not necessarily a conscious breath. Yeah, you're conscious, understanding that you're out there forcing your breath. But at the same time, even though I used to train 35 hours a week for 30 years or whatever you want to call it, I mean, it's been the dedication of my life, is that even when I wasn't exercising, now that I look back, I was holding my breath the rest of the time. So you only have the residual effect of your breathing benefits uh, of the metabolic process. But what happens to the rest of the time that you're doing your normalcy, right? I'd still have problems. Relationships, problems or whatever it is, right? I've gone through states of depression
Hmm.
more than once. Even though I was this extreme user of my breath, it was quite different than when you understand and work with your breath at all times. Tension in our body comes from holding energy. And when you get good, and most people are holding their energy around how they breathe, and they have no depth on just in a resting state of breath, i.e., to me, what breath work is meditation. And if you just consciously work with it at all times, you could be living in a constant meditative state, something that I call active meditation. You don't need to go do, to me, it's great. You could do an hour exercise. That's meditative. It's great that you could do some kind of breath work for an hour, right? That's meditative. So you might have 2 hours of breath work practice in a day, but what are you doing the rest of the 22 hours?
Yeah.
To me, it's incorporating that breath into every existence of everything that you're doing while you're driving a car, while you're sitting at the computer, while you're walking. It's understanding and you're taking your breath by, to being more engaged in your existence and making this breath your way of life instead of it just being an afterthought. And most
I
people,
think,
like you say, you're the people you're talking about, it's an afterthought. They think about you. I get that all the time. Anytime, David Wilcox even said that, every time I hear your name, I take a breath.
yeah.
And the people that I worked with and the guy in San Francisco, it's created Algorithm Marketplace. And, he would say the same thing because, it's just like, it's got to be a reminder, and that's what we're here for. And if you get someone just to remind, just to practice it, people practice these great eating habits all the time, right? I mean, it's like, oh, eat this organic, this and this time of day, one meal a day. Oh, don't eat for 22, fasting, this and that. But if you look at the numbers and what the importance of what things are for our life to exist, the laws of threes of survival, 3 minutes without breath, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. If you divide 3 minutes, the amount of time you can live without breath, into 3 weeks, the amount of time you can live without food, it's 10,080 times more important to breathe than it is to eat. So for your health system, for your being, for any, it's ridiculous to think anything else about than breath, right? On the magnitude of numbers. And so then if you could start understanding and become more efficient at understanding how the physiological aspects of how to breathe and to become more efficient, like with the training methodology as an athlete would do, you could take that number and you could blow it off the charts, because then you become more and more efficient at extracting or expelling the toxins out of the body and absorbing the good nutrients in every single breath we take. Prana is a word that people talk about, but prana is, what is prana? Prana is, everything, because in the air, it's all the same microparticles of the elements of the periodic table that build everything that we have. So, people say, how is it possible that you could live, on breath alone? But if you understand that you could, you're absorbing all this through, this magnitude of number of being extremely efficient.
I think also the difference here is that consciousness is involved. So if you're consciously breathing, if you're aware you're breathing and you're controlling your breath, or you're going deeper, or you're moving it in different ways, then you're much more present in the breath. Whereas most people, they're all breathing, but they're all breathing poorly. And also I was, thinking about how over the years since the Industrial Revolution, you had a lot of people down the mines. Like we had adults and kids down the mines, and their breath was wrecked and their systems wrecked, and then their children and their children. So we're passing on these very polluted atmospheres, polluted ways of working, ways of thinking, and now we live in an extremely polluted world. And so our breath is vital to that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I even look at it in a deeper sense. And if you look at the Industrial Revolution and when you start to become mechanized, yeah, there was pollution as a factor that goes involved with that, and, the pollution of the body, mining, the factories, they're very polluted places. And we were spewing stuff all out. We're still doing the same thing. It hasn't really changed too much. But the thing is that you have to look at the more that we became mechanized, the more that we stopped actually just having to manually work and walk and all these things that we normally we worked our breath. You had to work your breath. It wasn't a conscious effort, but it was just a part of life unto itself. So the more that we become mechanized to now, that people have to actually do less, right? We have remote controls. People drive around and circle around the parking lots and to find a closer place instead of parking afar and using just driving into itself. Riding a horse takes a lot more energy than driving a car. People are just sitting in their cars, and they're not breathing, and the sitting posture in itself doesn't allow for good breath. And if you think about it, right? I mean, and it's just like, and if you look at people who are depressed, get into that fetal position. When you're in that fetal position, all curled up, try to breathe. And so that's a more extreme sitting position. And so unless you're conscious about how you're holding your body, and you just become more and more depressed, because what does the word depression come from? It means to press down upon. When you're depressed, you feel like there's a fucking, I should not swear in here, but you should say, we could edit that kind of stuff out. Yeah, but, and it doesn't matter. I mean, because this is me. I don't mind for the record to, for me to be who I am. But anyway, when you have an anvil sitting on your chest, you can't breathe. And so the whole sense of getting that weight off of you is actually changing and transforming your body and how you hold your energy through your lungs. Because when you have pain, and people talk about the heart chakra, but when you have pain, it's not over your heart, right? You have the sinking feeling behind this manubrium, right? In your chest, it's sunken. And it's not in your heart. Yeah, your heart might have, but it's the association that we have. The heart really is, and if we look at what's happened with surgery, we tried to do heart transplants. It wasn't very successful, but when we did the heart-lung transplants, we have extreme success rates out of it. It went from one to the other. And we have to look at the heart and the lungs as one unit. We have to understand that fourth chakra point it's really, to me, it's not correct to say it's heart. Heart is, if you look at the lungs and how they are, you have 3 lobes on your right side, 2 lobes on your left side, and the heart sits above the other. Well, I would say evolutionary wise, or whatever, how we became who we are, that third lobe is actually, of the other side of the lungs is your heart. So really you have to look at the center and where you feel your pain. And when you start breathing into that area, you can start unlocking all that depression. I mean, we could change the world getting everyone off the antidepressants or whatever other drug that we have for anti-anxiety or, what we call ADHD, whatever, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, these are, I mean, that one specifically, that's, I do like some of the main commentators on that, saying that, when you're growing up as a child and then you learn coping mechanisms, you fade out, you sort of lose, you don't want to be there, you're in freeze mode, and then you sort of fade out, you disassociate, and that becomes your norm. And I just think that, obviously we don't have data on pre-industrial revolution and how our breathing habits were and how people weren't living as long as they are now, but we're falsely kept alive now by all sorts of drugs and you name it, and the quality of life probably is far worse. Perhaps. I mean, that's a, maybe maybe that's not correct to say that. But the main thing I'm hearing from you is that the center of these unity of breath teaching is that together, if we all take responsibility for our breathing and consciously breathe more and more every day and throughout the day, not just once or twice, we can really heal our bodies and stop the cravings and the hunger for this sort of consumerism in the modern world that's destroying the planet and each other. That's a part of it as well. There's this thing about hunger and craving.
Yeah, it's absolutely. When you need less, you want less, you have more, and you can enjoy the moment. The beauty of everything. Don't have to be, and that, it's, to me, it gets back to that whole thing about being in breath. And when the energy around you is, when the shit's hitting the fan, and you could be calm amongst it, and you can still enjoy the beauty of the moment instead of just concentrating the angst on things that we can't change, and that are much bigger than us, that are going on in the world. And so there's just, people are just just, there's no wonder people aren't angst, right? and it's all locked into their breathing habits. Change the breathing habits. Make great breathing habits your norm. Make it your diet. Make it your mantra. It will guarantee to change your life in one way or another. If you want to lose fat, I mean, it's pretty simple. People want to, when it gets down to it, when people go into exercise regimes and they want to try to lose weight, what happens is, what they go out there and they exercise, and they burn all the glycogen stores out of the muscles, because they're not exercising, so they're not working their working on at a slower rate, because their body is so out of shape. And so they burn all the glycogen stores out. So they're hungry. So they have to go back and eat again. And so they go back and forth in this pendulum, swinging back and forth with their weight issue. But then also they use the scale, and they look at the scale as an indicator of their health, when muscle mass weighs more than fat. The best way, or the reason why exercise is beneficial, and if you do it at a slower rate, is because it's exhalation. That's how 85% of all fat is exhaled out. Toxins are held in the fat cells. So when you get good at exhalation, you start getting rid of the unwanted baggage that we're carrying around, dis-ease into our body. There is changing your breathing, understanding your breathing habits. And instead of saying, let's take a big breath in, which I have never, ever, all systems that I've ever been a part of and seen, and everyone take a big breath in. Now, the first thing you should do is take a big breath out. You want to expel everything out of your body, all the way down into the ground, using your solar plexus to tighten up and squeeze into the chest, and really expel it out. Because then you don't want to rebreathe that stagnant air that's being held in our lungs, and all aspects of our lungs. And so what you're trying to do is reinvigorate, and use your core groups of muscles to be able to get as much toxins that are held as a residual effect, because we have poor breathing habits that are in our lungs. And so then
that sounds like a workout, when you're really using your muscles and your solar plexus to exhale the air. Are you saying that the more you do that regularly every day, maybe, who knows, every hour, that will eventually become normal? Your natural way of breathing will become deeper and fuller?
Well, the other part of it is, when let me finish on that, this first part, that when you exhale out fully, then you become more efficient, because it's so much, and you'll find it's so much easier to inhale your next breath. And also your capacity, you just change the capacity. Let's just say that you exhaled out 50% more, but I'm going to guarantee you it's more like probably 80-90% more for most people. And when you get better at it, you become more efficient at it. When you exhale, that 80%, let's just call it 80%, is stagnant air that's been sitting in there. Now you have allowed yourself 80% more fresh air on your next inhalation of fresh air. And so now, you instead of you're utilizing this this air that we call fresh, that's non-toxic, right? So the whole idea of exhalation is get all toxicity out of the body. When you're holding your breath, that's why depression happens, because your body starts filling up with toxicity. The mitochondrial process in the cell, what is happening, it's as it's working, creating energy as a byproduct, and that byproduct, it needs to be excreted out. That excretion is acidity, and if we don't become efficient at getting rid of the acidity out of the body, if we're never going to be, well, it goes counterintuitive to being healthy. Acidity, pain.
Yes.
Pain is acidity. A buildup of acidity is pain. Depression is acidity. And we in the Native Americans, or even in the ancient teachings, they would call it a negative energy and a positive energy, right? Acidity is pH negative. Your body, when you're pH positive, and you think about it, positive energy, it allows you to, when you're a positive energy in your body, when you have a pH positive energy, when you're basic, when an acidic environment comes into the body, you can buffer it. What happens when you exercise, you can't buffer it anymore. And that's why you train yourself to buffer that acidity. That's what the aging process happens, is because of this acidic environment. The telomeres on the genetic ends of the genes start getting whitewashed. But the more that you deacidify your body, your genes will be invigorated. They'll become back to what they were. You could actually get as good as understanding and working and understanding there's recessive genes, and you can start turning on and off the gene codes that you want to do, changing eye color, body configuration. I mean, I'm getting way far deep into but
well, that's good. I think that's the potential when people hear that, if they were to take responsibility for their breath, and I know how hard it is, having my story, but when one, are you consciously breathing in and out and in every single breath?
I am throughout the day flowing with my breath, no matter what. I mean, it's the thing that it is me. It doesn't mean I'm practicing a level of breathing throughout the day, but it just, I'm I'm doing it differently at different times. Let's just put it that way, But yes, I'm with my breath at all times. When I'm waiting tables, and I'm overwhelmed as a man, 63 years old, and I'm working around people that are most of half my age. And when you're putting yourself under that fast-paced walking and managing multiple tasks at one time, 3-course pairings with wine, and you're being an entertainer at 6 different tables at one time, that can be very overwhelming. But I've learned to teach myself to be this efficient breather at all times. And so I don't get overwhelmed. I actually get energized by it, because it's making my mind work, and I'm not being overcome in the physical aspect. And I'm not through breath, in the state of breath. I don't falter. I'm practicing it every day. And that's how I take my breathing with everything that I do. I'm out in the garden. I call it yoga, right? I'm out there bending around, picking weeds, doing this, but it's always centered around my breath all the time. And I transformed. I made this breath, me. and it was,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, it happened as a process of going through 8 to 14 hours of yoga breathing a day. While I was a bartender in a town called Calistoga in the Napa Valley, quite famous place. And I was at a restaurant there as a bartender. And all I did was I went to work and I bartended, and I went home and I breathed. And, and voila, because I went through this process. And of course, I've learned many breathing techniques and made them into an understanding far beyond the simplicity that I'm talking about. But to me, I've learned many different breathing techniques, and I think people should learn many breathing techniques themselves. There's much information out there. But anyway, through this process of 8 to 14 hours of breathing, what I call yoga breathing, I lost all hunger and all need to drink water. I though, you know, and as I was working at a high intensity job, I had a bar in this restaurant that I had 13 bar stools, 7 tables. I had to make drinks for the whole restaurant, and it was, you know, it was quite a athletic endeavor, and I did it while not eating or drinking water.
How long ago was that, and how long did that?
That was about 20 years ago.
20 years ago, and how long did it take? That whole.
Well, it was kind of, for me, I mean, it's hard to say how long it take because I've been working with my breath the whole time.
Yeah.
You know, and that wasn't a conscious effort for me to try to have this state. It was really a response to me of overcoming severe anguish and pain because my daughter's mother took my daughter to Hawaii, which, you know, she promised that she wouldn't take her afar. And so Hawaii is a 5-hour plane ride from here. So it wasn't like she was moving to the next town. And I went into, I knew that, I mean, it was, you know, broken promises, and to be away from my daughter, something, you know, it was going to throw me into the loop. So I went into this deep state of, say, I could feel sorry for myself, where I could use all these breathing techniques and the teachings of Buddha and the teachings of, you know, every single religion is out there, encompassing it into one thing and saying, I am not going to let this happen. And I went into a deep state of breath. And when I went into an understanding of this breath and started breathing, the euphoria, the states of being out of body, you know, reoccurring dreams. I mean, it just, you know.
So you were working, breathing, and then basically you're breathing all the time because the breath you brought into the work, and then it just became your life.
Well, yeah, no, during that time, I just made it, you know, I made my breath my priority. And it just, and I had to understand why. My scientific mind and the education that I had in science and exercise physiology, understanding the science behind it, though I've read about it in a lot of the books that are, or the teachings that are out there, Yogananda, about people who can live without eating. I never understood how that was possible, because when I was a triathlete, I used to consume up to 7,500, 8,000 calories a day. So it was never something, and I actually always had an adage, I'm going to exercise my whole life so I can eat whatever I want. You know, I love ice cream. simple things that I did. So, you know, for me, it wasn't something that I sought. It was a byproduct of this becoming breath, or understanding that we are breath, and just working with that breath and actually changing the shape of the body to not having any tension in it, breathing in and out and working. That's where yoga comes in, and stretching and rolling on the ball, where we could get into further. But it's about making the ease around your whole breathing. There's so many bones and muscles and everything that's involved with your breath process. And you just think about the intercostal muscles between the rib cages. If you could open up those, and so they're not so tense, because most people, they're so tense and through their back. And as we get older, down, you know, I mean, I have back problems still, but when you could start getting into your breath, you could start changing the shape of how you hold the cavity of the lungs. When you start increasing volume, in the cavity of the lungs, you can start again becoming more efficient with every breath you take. So when you become more efficient, you could process more. The whole, that it's just an understanding of all of our tension is held through our breath. When we have problems that go on, and sadness, if we have an injury, people get locked up in their breath. You break a bone, let's say you break your arm, you mess up your shoulder, you're in a sling. They'll fix your arm, but how long does it take for you to really open up and heal all the muscle tissue that's there, strengthen it back again? But then you have that held energy that's in that shoulder of holding your, and then it collapses along your lung. And so when you start getting good at breath, you could actually use breath as a tool to fill it in your lungs to push from the inside out. And so you can start understanding where you're holding tension. And when you understand where you hold tension, you can start releasing your own tension.
Well, this is where I'd like to go for maybe 5 minutes, and then maybe we answer some of the other questions, and then we can stop the recording today. But for me, I remember it was maybe 3 weeks ago, maybe a month, when I noticed that I was naturally just stopping the air coming in for whatever reason. I wasn't exhaling fully was fine, and I could exhale fully, then just hold myself there. And I realized, well, that's where I normally hold myself, is that after the exhale, which I think is where most people hold themselves. And it's not a full exhale, it's just a sort of but they hold themselves there. And then noticing that the inhale, whether I wasn't fully exhaling or not, but the inhale was quite shallow. So really noticing when I do inhale fully, there's something that tries to block me doing it in my solar plexus down there. So for many, many people listening to this or reading this, that will be the same. And so it takes effort to really push through that and notice that there's something, whatever it is.
Well, it's called memory.
Yeah.
Your body muscles, how muscles work. You have to, if you're flexing your bicep, you have your bicep contracts, but then your tricep has to expand. And so that's what's happened, is you have resistance to change. It's really hard because you have resistance to change, but through practicing and understanding where you're holding an energy, you could work on that resistance, because the more that you do it, that more that resistance will let go. I mean, but it's like stretch. I mean, it's really, literally stretching. There's and then that's how energy is held, and just think about it, and how our spinal system works, and all these intricate bones and muscles and everything, and you get tweaked, you fall, just a simple fall, you hit your hip, and now your whole body is whacked out. But you might not have hurt yourself severely, but you might have bruised yourself severely, but it's hard to get around. And so do we, as we get older and older, we don't really address those issues and how we're holding energy, because it might cause something else to happen. But then if you think about, if you were an abused person, as a kid growing up, or something that happened in the womb, that energy gets transferred. And I'm not talking about just physical abuse. So many people have tremendous amounts of physical abuse that goes in their life, not necessarily from their parents, siblings, other people, or whatever else. But we have these issues that go on, and we have this mental abuse, which I don't know that there's anyone who hasn't had mental anguish as they're growing up. I mean, most of us all have some kind of torment that goes on. But it all gets related in our breath, and our breath gets taken away. Our joy gets taken away because of that. And so we start becoming closed in, and we start becoming more tension, and we hold our breath more and more, protecting our heart, which is our lungs, right? We become into that fetal position, because that's what you're doing, is when you're rolling over, you're protecting your heart. So most people have very bad posture, and especially in how they relate to understanding how to breathe and how to release the tension through their breath. This is a tool. Most people, to me, it's a tool. When people get into psychology and and these things to help people with their mind problems, and when we put them on drugs, you know, we have to start getting out of the mind, because that's the problem, is that people are thinking, and when we start trying to get to people to thinking, we ask them questions and just get back into an action, you know, because breathing gives people a tool. It's a self tool. This is something that it's available to everyone. And if you understand the principles behind it, which is scientifically based, and understanding the magnitudes of change that can happen, you know, I mean, I'm not saying that people should become like me. I'm a freak of nature. I mean, I've always been pushing the boundaries of everything. This isn't about not eating or not having hunger, but it's about living peacefully within the existence of this plane of reality that we call on the spaceship Earth.
I think that, yeah, and I'd say that I'd like to go into these things, these questions, other questions now, but we can come back to all of this in greater depth, because there's so many angles to this and ways of speaking about it, particularly particularly the day-to-day of people's reality regarding the breath and how they respond to it. So one of the things is, if we're imagining, in essence, we're imagining being there. I believe that your idea would be to be there the last day of that retreat on the 10th of August. Is that right?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I think somewhat that's a good
9th or 10th.
Yeah, I think, well, yeah, something like that. I don't, you know, just depends. Yeah, but around that 10th, yeah. I'm not hung up on it.
Yeah, and then well, I just think that they were saying that because Diego will be there, and whether
Right.
Diego,
Yeah.
and whether Diego is available, you know, on the afterwards, say it was from the 18th for that week.
It seems, yeah, I think sounds like Diego is, I think he's kind of, you know, I think his juices are flowing. I think he's kind of hooked. So I think that we have some time that's going to go on there. But yeah, the 10th, combining with the men's retreat. And then what came to me is just having on that starting after the men's retreat, is having that week-long festival of breath, you know, and have the first annual. And I think this is a good way to sell it and to fund the money for it as well, because I want to make some proclamations. I mean, I'm going to be saying some stuff, right? I mean, how many people are going to believe that I can't eat, and I'm going to do a dog and pony show? I'm going to do the thing that I told Darius about, you know, you got to show something, you know. But the thing is, I want to show, it's not about proving something, but it gives me a platform to be able to talk for 7 days about breath and be able to show people that they could change, you know. You know, but I want to kind of like work it into that, and I want to make it a continuous thing. I think in essence, and we talked about that before, having it as the European base or whatever. I mean, we're talking about in a future sense, and having something happen, you know, quarterly, or I don't know, but you know, well, but at least having an annual thing, to me, having an annual thing, at least is having this whole concept that I want to have these breathe-ins. I want it to happen everywhere in the world. I want it to happen in cities. I want people to come together and have this critical mass of breath, where they come, instead of protesting, where they bring together this, you know, this unity and sharing of all the different breathing techniques that all of us know or we're missing, and helping each other, you know, through this and detoxifying. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. And create less acidity in the world. We're the biggest polluters.
Yeah. So just to get to this. The general. So just imagine, you know, we arrive the 9th or 10th or whatever it is, and then we're there for 2 weeks. So Diego will be available for filming for 1 day, so we could do all sorts of conversations and filming then. And then and the other people are going to be around, of course, maybe on the 11th. And then being available throughout the men's retreat, and, you know, if Diego's around, great. And it's just finding out what's his daily rate, and then there's like, what's the costs of, you know, post-production, creating it and turning it into something, because that then is content for the website, because, you know, everything you're saying, everything you're doing, showing the exercises, showing what you're doing, And it's a combination, I think, of the actual doing it. But I think it's much more, for me, it's much more everyone sitting in a circle and breathing together. It's not just one individual doing it. It's like you can see
No,
people.
no, absolutely. I'm gonna be, yeah. 6 o'clock in the morning. Okay, here I am. Let's do it. This is what I do. I mean, it's getting together, but I don't want any rigidity to things because I'm gonna be doing it all day long. I'm gonna be doing it all day long. I mean, I'm going to be showing people all day long, groups all day long. I want people to break up into groups all day long. I don't know, go drum. Drumming is breathing. Go dance. It's not about following what I have to say. It's about understanding that there's multitudes of ways, and you should practice all of them, about incorporating breath into everything that you do. It's kind of a festival kind of thing. I could see that, making it fun. I mean, and this breath is fun. That's why I wanted to make it with kids and families, because kids will naturally, I can hear kids right now over there screaming, running around. They're breathing naturally. Our breath gets taken away from us as we get older with all these weights that are added on from parents and society and our peers, siblings, everything else that gets taken away. Most, right? Most kids are out there, having fun.
So when we're there, is that question, is your vision a standalone project or part of a series or platform?
Oh, all the above. No, it's not a standalone. No, this is a continuum. This is a worldwide movement. This is what's needed for change, right? What was the thing? Breath is the only sustainable. Well, you wrote it down, but but there's many of these key things that you wrote down. But no, I mean, there's no way. Change is necessary at this point in time, and offer people a tool of breath, an understanding of breath, and they can change their lives. It just depends on how much you work with it. Most people aren't working with it.
Breath is the sustainable truth.
Yes, there you go.
So I think breath is the only sustainable truth is a very important phrase, and there'll be other ones. And I think that I think generally your responses to Peter's questions are you, and we are very flexible during that time. I mean, I don't know when I can be there physically because of my son, but yeah.
Well, could you bring your son?
No, she's not there. No.
Okay. Well, I just
good try.
Well, it's just the things change when things change, and things that were locked before, when you change, unlock. So resistance comes from us and our energies. Often it's not from outside forces. So so as your breath changes, other things will happen around you. So what is talking? Talking is exhalation. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's why people feel good generally when they talk, and it's important to get the shit out, the crap out, the toxicity out, the acidity out of the body. So talking is a very important part of the process. But you don't have to say words.
Just can you I mean, I'm imagining I'm Peter, or I'm, not Diego, but I'm imagining like an executive producer, right? Because I'm talking to this friend of mine. I've never met him in person, but we've chatted along many hours.
I'm happy that you're going to be talking with him.
Yeah, he's the producer, and he'll say, okay, so what's the main idea here? Because we've had people have heard about breath work, they might have heard about breatharianism, they might have heard about Wim Hof, but what's the difference here? What is the essential story? Is it your story and what happened to you, and you see actually the power of, I don't want to put words in your mouth. So what is it?
No, there's multitudes of stories here. I mean, my story is, I think that unfortunately I'd rather not be known. but that's, but that's not what I'm here to do. I'm actually been given this information, and I'm here, and I have to. It's my bane to share it, and it's about change. It's about what's going on in
The,
this world.
so I'm getting to what this guy might say to me. So what you're saying is the essence of the whole thing is you're starting a movement around breath, and its breath is the only sustainable truth, and that we have to get that, and only through unity of breath together will we change the world. We cannot do it in any other way. It won't be the mind, it won't be a policy, it won't be a concept, it won't be a new technology, it'll be breath.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, and if you look at all the teachings, right, even the word spirituality, the spirituality comes from the Latin word spiritus, which means breath. The enlightenment, it's not about being a light bulb that burns out. It's not about being Las Vegas, moths to a light. It's about being lighter than. And so how do you deacidify the body? It's through exhalation. Like the nirvana, the nirvana is a Sanskrit word. Sanskrit, the Ramayana, some of the oldest teachings, Ayurvedic, which I follow the Vedic principles. I've studied a lot of that. It means to blow out, as in candle. How do you blow out a candle? And it's not you can't blow a candle out softly. No, you blow it out forcefully. Through exhalation, you will find this place called nirvana. Through an action, you will find peace. The teachings are all there. We just don't see the truth in them. I've been able to, because I live in this state, I'm out of body, or I've been able to travel out of the body to be able to look back to see what the true nature of things are, because when you become not part of it, you can see what it is. But so I've been able to develop extreme, people would call Siddhic abilities. In most traditions, a person could go without eating would be called a saint. Yeah. But I've been able to do that while working with people constantly. I brought the teachings to everything that I've done, and I practice it to a deep extent. People will say, so much, why are you bartending? I said, you don't think these people deserve the knowledge that I have to share too? And I have to make a living. And actually, to me, again, it's a practice. I've been able to practice to an extreme circumstances, not just in a cave, not set through separation in a monastery. I've been able to do it while having an extreme. That's where I've been able to become a freak about it. And that's where, because I lived outside of that system, I could see the makings for what it is. And really, when it breaks down to it, hunger is just mostly an emotional attachment. This is a very important understanding. When you're a baby, when you're in the womb, you have your food, your source of energy comes directly from your mother. But also whatever is going on in your mother while you're in the womb, the angst or whatever else, the happiness, all these kind of emotions are being fed through you. So whatever their diet is and whatever's happening to them, it's imprinted into you. So, but then when you're born and then you come out and okay, now you're crying. And so what happens when we're crying? It's always okay. You put a bottle in the mouth or you put it to the tit, right? And now you're understanding that, okay, well, this calms the baby, it stops them crying, but is it really, is hunger why the baby was crying? But we're always placating an emotion with food. And so we're taught at a very young age to be conditioned to our emotions around food. And most hunger is about some kind of emotional attachment or some kind of so when you can start getting to the cores of people and your problems and understanding this process of what's happened to us at a very young age. Self-realization is an important thing. We're just conditioned to eat. We don't need to eat as much. We throw, working in restaurants, working in a Michelin restaurant, and we're these 3-course meals. I throw away so much food we could feed the world on the food that's being fed. I can never eat a meal there. I can't even eat one of the plates there at the place that I work, and I don't drink. So I mean, it's really interesting living in this reality that's not necessarily mine.
I think I better go soon, and I think that we've got the answers to the questions more or less, and we can. I'll upload this tonight. It will transcribe it. I'll get Jade to sort of work on it. I can look at it, humanify it, humane it, send it to you, and then we look at it and say, okay, send it across. And I think that, again, one of the things that's obvious is that there are so many people who are thinking about psychedelics or supplements or all sorts of different techniques and processes and formulas that are going to actually, they're very connected to them. They think that's going to save the world, particularly psychedelics. And they just give us certain experiences, but we live in the world. We live in a very, for me, that's why breath is more likely to be adopted than psychedelics. A lot of people just won't go near them. And I think that, it's not, and okay, the Amazon and all the experience of the indigenous people, and yeah, but we don't live in the Amazon. We live in cities and all the rest of it. And I think that for me, this phrase, breath is the only sustainable truth, and everyone's got it. It's ubiquitous. You don't have to be special. You don't have to go and spend thousands and thousands on retreats. You do it in your in your living room. And I think that for me is core to what we're seeing here.
Yeah. Well, and absolutely, that that's what it's all about. Is that it's simple. You don't need running shoes. I always had the freedom of running because I needed the least amount of running shoes, right? Versus biking and all the other gear that was involved in the things that I've done. But that's I don't even need to run anymore. Because if you could move the same amount of breath that you could do on an hour run by being stationary, then you're not burning all of those glycogen stores out of your body. You're becoming more efficient without having to put the stress on the body. I mean, this system of understanding and working with breath, it goes for people who are old or in wheelchairs, that are bedridden, that are, whatever injury. If you're alive, you're breathing, but you're not breathing very good. This is the system that it doesn't require you to go exercise because you can't exercise, but you can exercise your body in that situation. And getting to the point of psychedelics, I think psychedelics it's becoming, mainstream, but I do see the benefits of it. But DMT is created in our lungs. DMT is naturally in our body. We have cannabinoid receptors in our body. We have all these mechanisms that are in us. When you get good at the biological machine, when you become using the greatest biohack we have, breath, you tap into all these so-called euphoric states. You could live safely because you're doing it yourself without the need of an outside energy force, because you never know what the dosage is going to be. You never know what the reaction is going to be. People who take multiple doses of things are expecting more, and oftentimes they're not going to get that. They're always chasing a high, and that's what happens with people who are on heroin or whatever else. They keep on chasing the high, and so there is a limiting effect of long-term usage of trying to achieve this state of being with an outside force like a drug, when you could have it when it's created all into yourself. This is where the thing is, that if that's what you want to get high on your own supply, and understanding and working with your breath at a deep level, you will do that. That's why people get into this runner high or the exercise high, right? When you're having an orgasm high. I mean, the euphoria that comes in life is from understanding and getting all the shit out so you're not so heavy. And so when you could practice good exhalation, when you could understand it, that's where what people want to achieve, this place called happiness. Is, to me, it's a place of de-acidification, a place of balance.
I gotta go.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. I will end that recording, and I'll then send it to YouTube.